Well, if you've been following along, you are aware that I am rebuilding this farm wagon undercarriage to turn it into a chuck wagon. Now these undercarriages, oftentimes we just refer to them as a wood axle or farm wagon undercarriage, but in the old days they were often referred to as a thimble skein undercarriage. Well, on the ends of these wood axles are some metal sleeves referred to as a skein. Now there are a couple different styles of skeins. The skein on this axle is actually a forged skein, and if we look at it close, we can see inside remnants where we can tell where that forge weld was made as this skein was formed in its original day. Now this collar was machined out, pressed into place, and you can see here there was a rivet that held this collar into place, and this is what the boxing, which is a cast iron sleeve, bumps up against as the wheel is assembled onto the skein. Well, there is also another style of skein that is not forged, but it is cast. We have one here that is a cast skein, and you can see there's a couple of numbers on the bottom that has a 3 and a 9. Well, this 3 is referring to the diameter of the skein right at the collar, and the 9 is the length of the boxing or the axle arm, or sometimes called the spindle. Well, both of these skeins are 3x9s, kind of. Now this cast one is 3 inches on the large end, down to 2 1/8 on the small end. This other forged skein that we are actually working with on this wagon is a 3x9, I would consider it, but it actually measures 3 1/8 on the large end down to 2 3/8 on the small end, both of them being 9 inches long. So this is also a good example of why wheels do not interchange between wagon to wagon. Here we have an 1/8 inch difference on the large end, but actually a 1/4 of an inch difference on the small end, both of them being 9 inches long on the boxing. So to take a wheel from one to the other, in this case, would not fit. We could take the larger one and put it on the smaller one, but then you would have a lot of play and a lot of slop. So anyway, this is why wheels are not easily interchanged, even though these both might be considered a 3-inch wagon. So you can see when we compare these two styles of skeins, even though their construction style is different, their design is both basically the same. The portion that runs on the boxing, that the hub runs on, is a straight taper. But from there back, as it attaches to the axle, it changes more to an oval on top, and it has a little flat spot there closer to the bottom of the axle. And if you remember from last week's video, I showed how the design for what is called the gather and swing is set into this axle so that the wheels run properly with that bottom spoke close to plumb, up and down, with a little bit of toe in. So these wheels are gathered up against the collar to keep the pressure off of the nut. Well, back in that day when there were production axles being made by the thousands, there were machines that were designed to actually turn these axle blanks to fit their skeins. And when you had a company that just had 3 or 4 different styles of skeins, it was not too difficult to set that machine up for mass production. But in a lot of times when these wagons came out into this part of the country, or actually any part of the country, many of the small towns had their local blacksmith shop, and they were requested to do the fixing on these axles if and when they were damaged or broken. Well, this is the case that we are going to do today, just as if a small town blacksmith was going to fix these axles. Well, it's kind of interesting to ponder just how they would have fixed it if they were on the trail. Say a wagon train left from Missouri headed for California, and somewhere in the Rockies something happened and an axle broke. How did they fix it? Did they take any special complicated tools? I don't think so. I think with just a draw knife we can make this skein fit this new axle. So that's the approach I'm going to take this week. I'm going to do it by hand, nothing fancy, a draw knife and a fire. So from last week, I already have the center where the end of this axle needs to be in this skein to accommodate for the gather and the swing. Remember, I dropped the end of this spindle down 3/8 of an inch for the swing, and I brought it forward 1/8 of an inch for the gather. Then the next part is to go back this about 8 inches where the straight taper is on this thimble skein, and that's the second point that I'm going to bring down close to size and kind of connect the dots. Now this next section is a little more difficult, but with the old axle sitting right beside, I can kind of get a bird's eye view of how this oval shape with a slight crown to it, down to more flat on the bottom, needs to be. So from measuring with my comparators, not really a caliper, but a comparator, to take one to the other and fit this new one pretty close. The fine fitting I'm going to do actually in the forge. So the goal is to have as much contact, preferably 100% contact, full length through the skein to the wood axle. The only way to do that without expending an enormous amount of time, in my book, is using the forge, using a fire, if that's what they would have had, to heat that up and actually burn it into place. I do this similar to pole tips on buggy poles. It's the same approach that I take when I am assembling a thimble skein onto a wood axle. And I know exactly where my high spots are, and it allows me to get that 100% fit. So I think you can see that fitting a thimble skein onto a wood axle is not really all that difficult. It is just a time-consuming process when you do it by hand. But you know, if it would have happened when they were in the middle of their journey from the east to the west, and you break down, what's time? You know, within probably a day or two, you'd have that tree cut down, maybe find an old log, hew it out, and you could make it fit and get that wagon back on the road again. Maybe a couple days, they'd be back and running. Pure speculation, but I'm guessing. Anyway, I hope that kind of shows how these can be done by hand. It's not really all that difficult. It just takes a little time. Once again, thanks for watching.